We're going to have to shift over to mine.
I'm just thinking I can get it working already.
Okay, well, that's good. I can just scroll through it. Why don't you just get out of this?
Yours was
Oh, it's already open.
from the beginning?
All right, good.
Or that, there's not money issue down, or?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Okay.
Glad to have y'all here.
Thank you.
In 1979, I ran across a man by the name of Tupper Saucy who lived in the county just north of me. I live in North Alabama. The town is Huntsville, Alabama. Drive 15 miles north and, gee, you're in Tennessee. Well, I went up there to talk to Tupper in 1979, and we became fast friends. And the reason why I did so is because I was interested in the money issue. My background, my training, my education in undergraduate school, I got a degree in economics. Economics has always been something that I've been incredibly interested in. One of the big issues that confronts the American people is the operation of the monetary system. Now, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you here have at least some appreciation of this Federal Reserve System or monetary systems based on credit? It's different from gold and silver coin. Are at least some of you conversant with that issue?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that there are really two important issues that confront the American people. And I'm not, there are a lot of other issues. But I think when you rank the issues that confront the American people, there are two that are critically important. To me, first, the money issue is perhaps one of the most paramount of importance. And the reason for that is that we're being subjected to a monetary system that was created by a powerful elite, and that monetary system is operated for their benefit to the detriment of the American people. They use this credit system, they use this paper money system, and when it's operating, it benefits them. It doesn't benefit us. So my presentation this morning is going to cover two matters. First, I'm going to spend a few minutes with you discussing the money issue. And then after that, I'm going to get into another issue that has some relationship to taxation. And it deals with jurisdiction. I've heard this tale, perhaps it's true, that there are Secret Service agents, they go around and they look at, counterfeit money. And I have been told that the way they determine what is counterfeit is by looking at what is real. So Secret Service agents, if they want to detect, fake $10 bills that are floating around, they're going to look at the real thing, and they're going to become so familiar with it, they can recognize the real thing, that the moment that they see something fake, they can recognize that it's fake. Now, based on that principle, what I'm going to do is, after I go through this money issue presentation, I am going to present to you something that relates to jurisdiction. And I am going to use you as an experiment. And I've got about 130 pages out of the United States statutes at large, and I'm going to show to you something that the Congress of the United States has written in the United States statutes at large. And it may be very revealing to you. And I may not tell you what it means, but I do want to solicit your opinions about what some of this stuff means. Let me go through. Let's start off with the money issue. This is something that's real important. The United States Constitution has monetary provisions in it. When they met in Philadelphia in 1787, this country had gone through hyperinflation as a result of the Revolutionary War. There wasn't any real agreement about what type of monetary system we should have. Well, the Constitutional Convention reached an agreement. At that time, and still today, the power to declare a legal tender was possessed by the states. And they had, made paper a legal tender, and as a result of making paper a legal tender, there had been rampant inflation. You can go back and read the documents and hit the history of the Revolutionary War and see that they did, have rampant inflation, and It was pathetic. The paper money soon died in the hands of the possessors. So an agreement was reached by the Philadelphia Convention, and that agreement manifests itself in the United States Constitution. You have in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, here's the framework that was created. Well, the states were going to declare legal tender, but it was going to be gold and silver coin. Congress was given, because they wanted one source for the whole country to make the coin, Congress was given the power in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 to coin money and regulate the value thereof. Now the states were, by means of Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, see it says here, no state shall, ... coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin or tender to pay for debts. Now, once the Constitution went into effect, George Washington made a statement that there was a tremendous benefit from the ratification of the United States Constitution. Whereas before that point in time, they had a paper monetary system, and it had depressed the commerce in this country. As a result of them instituting that constitutional monetary system, we had an economic bloom. The country revived itself, commerce flourished. Now, you can go through this period of time and look at what the courts were having to say about these monetary provisions that were set forth in the United States Constitution. And, one of my favorites that I like is from the United States Supreme Court. And to me, while there are 50 maybe cases that deal with gold and silver back during this period of time, to me, my personal opinion is that this case, United States against Marigold, an 1850 case, really demonstrates, well, the purpose, intent, and meaning of the provisions of the Constitution that I just mentioned. Now, this was a counterfeiting case. And the defendant in this case was making some argument about, Congress can't make some, counterfeiting laws, even though there are provisions in the United States Constitution that authorize Congress to make laws regarding counterfeiting. But here the United States Supreme Court is explaining in concrete terms what the United States Constitution means in reference to the monetary powers and disabilities contained in it. The court said they appertain rather to the execution of an important trust invested by the Constitution and to the obligation to fulfill that trust on the part of the government. Namely, the trust and duty of creating and maintaining a uniform and pure metallic standard of value throughout the Union. The power of coining money and regulating its value was delegated to Congress by the Constitution for the very purpose, as assigned by the framers of that instrument, of creating and preserving the uniformity and purity of such standard of value. Is that pretty clear? But then let's go on. There's another real important quote from the Supreme Court case. This one dealing with counterfeiting. If the medium which the government was authorized to create and establish could immediately be expelled and substituted by one it had neither created, estimated, nor authorized, one possessing no intrinsic value, the power conferred by the Constitution would be useless, wholly fruitless of every end that was designed to accomplish. Whatever functions Congress are by the Constitution authorized to perform, they are, when the public good requires it, bound to perform. And on this principle, having emitted a circulating medium, a standard of value indispensable for the purposes of the community and for the actions of the government itself, they are accordingly authorized and bound in duty to prevent its debasement and expulsion and the destruction of the general confidence and convenience by the influx and substitution of a spurious coin in lieu of the constitutional currency. Whoa! Now, aren't those powerful words? Here you have, right before the Civil War, United States Supreme Court coming out and said, whoa, we got to have gold and silver coin as our medium of exchange. That's what's authorized by the United States Constitution. And Congress has a duty to prevent its debasement and expulsion. Well, let's move ahead of time real quickly. Now we get into the Civil War, And here is another real important case in reference to the monetary provisions. Little understood. You know, it's been one of my favorites for years. It's posted over on my website, but you know, there's not a whole lot of people that make arguments about monetary, you know, changing our monetary system that rely upon this case. But this one dealt with the validity of Confederate currency. Confederate currency. Now, Confederate currency that circulated, I've got one framed in my office. You can look at it. It promised to pay. There was a Confederate currency said, we will pay, you know, X number of dollars. If you had a $50 note, we'll pay $50 after the ratification of a treaty of peace between the United States and the Confederate States of America. So there was a condition. The Confederate government was going to pay, after the war was over, money. So that the note, the Confederate note, was a promise to pay. And it did have a conditional promise to pay. And so that's what the United States Supreme Court is taking up in this case involving Confederate currency. May I suggest to you, as we go through what I have quoted here, you make a comparison with Federal Reserve notes. As contracts in themselves, and they're talking about Confederate notes, except in the contingency of successful revolutions, these notes were nullities, for except in that event there could be no payer. They bore indeed this character upon their face, for they were made payable only after the ratification of a treaty of peace between the Confederate States and the United States of America. While the war lasted, however, they had a certain contingent value and were used as money in nearly all the business transactions of many millions of people. They must be regarded, therefore, as a currency imposed on the community by irresistible force. Considered in themselves in the light of subsequent events, these notes had no real value, but they were made current as dollars by irresistible force. They were the only measure of values which the people had, and their use was a matter of almost absolute necessity. And this use gave them a sort of value, insignificant and precarious enough, it is true, but always having a sufficient definite relation to gold and silver, the universal measure of value, so that it was always easy to ascertain how much gold and silver was the real equivalent of the sum expressed in this currency. Now, I want to ask this question. You know, y'all probably have never seen these quotes from this case, but can you not substitute Federal Reserve note in here for Confederate currency? And aren't Federal Reserve notes imposed on us by irresistible force? Now, I want to give you a little quick summary. You know, this is Larry Becraft on fractional reserve banking, real quick. You know, what we have here, looking at this, is, you know, this is what fractional reserve, there's an ancient history going back into, you know, the Bank of Amsterdam. Let's start off there in the early 1700s. You know, what it was quickly learned by bankers that they could have a reserve of, say, like 10,000 pounds, if you're in England, 10,000 pounds of coin, and then you could issue all these outstanding notes on it. And you could get the community to use your notes as a medium of exchange. And they learned that, whoa, 10,000 pounds of gold and silver coin could probably support an outstanding issue of notes equal to 100,000 pounds. The guys were making money. That's what fractional reserve banking is all about. You understand that? Most of you here have probably a pretty good conception of what fractional reserve banking is. Now let's use an analysis. Let's look at this from a theoretical situation about what's going on. And this is real important because I don't find a whole lot of Americans that understand what you see in every, you know, there are certain things, if you're aware of certain principles in just as you go through life, you know, most people, if you're not aware of something, certain events cannot be explained. Okay, but once you learn a certain principle, then you can make sense out of even current events that you see. And here is one that I think that is real important. You know, why here the Obama administration comes into office? Well, let's go back to the Bush administration. Let's even go back to the Clinton administration. You know, you can see it developing. Federal budget deficits. You know, you can go back during the Clinton years, you know, they were in the billions. You know, we got to have a budget deficit. You know, they say they had a balanced budget during that period of time, which is a bunch of malarkey. But, you know, by the time we get up here into the recent past, just last year, we're talking about we have to have a budget deficit at the federal level of trillions in credit. Why does that happen? Most people do not understand that it is a matter of economic necessity because of the monetary system that we have, that we must have tremendous budget deficits until we change it. Now, let's imagine this situation. You know, there are 5 guys on an island and they want to play cards. You know, they've been shipwrecked. One guy had a deck of cards that survived the crash. You know, they wash up on shore and now they're living on this desert island. They've gotten to the point where their basic needs are taken care of. They can fish, and, you know, they built a little tree houses and stuff like that. And, you know, so now it's no longer pressing their needs of their survival. Now they want to entertain themselves. Well, there's one guy that had a deck of cards. And so 4 guys approach him and say, well, hey, we want to play cards. You know, we haven't entertained ourselves in a long time. And you have a deck of cards and we want to play a game. So the card owner, he has how many cards? 52. Now he's going to, you know, if there are 4 guys wanting to play, you know, some card game, you know, the card owner is going to loan out to each one 13 cards. But he's going to take a note back from them. Oh, I want you to sign here, you know, you're going to have to promise to repay those 13 cards that are loaned to you, and also want 1 additional card in the way of interest. And to ensure that I get repaid, you know, I want you to give me a mortgage on your treehouse. You know, it's nice. I'll consider that real good collateral. And so each of the card players agrees. And so here's the problem that is created in this type of a scam, if you will. There are only 52 cards available. Each card owner gets 13 cards. But what is the aggregate liability of all the card owners? Each card player owes 1 additional card. And so when you tally up the economic thing that's going on here, the situation, you have only 52 cards in circulation. But since they've been loaned into circulation, you have aggregate liabilities of what? 56 cards? Now, how in the world can you discharge a liability of 56 cards with only 52 in circulation? Is it possible? Now let's translate what's going on there economically. That illustration I just gave to you about the card players on an island, may I suggest to you, is the same operation that is going on today. All of our medium of exchange, bank liabilities, credit, if you will, we have the same thing going on. And now, in this illustration that you see up here on my PowerPoint presentation, I've just substituted industries for card players. You know, here we have a central bank. He's the card owner. He has $4 million that he's ready to loan out. And we got 4 players. We got the automotive industry, we got the agricultural industry, we got the medical industry, we got the construction industry. They all need credit money. And so the central bank, with its $4 million in credit available, loans to the automotive industry, $1 million. Agricultural gets $1 million. Medical gets $1 million. Construction gets $1 million. But the central bank is charging 10% interest. So at the end of a year, you know, the automotive industry is going to owe $1.1 million. So is agriculture, medical, and construction. So what you have here, to make a direct comparison, what you have here is the same thing that you saw with the card example. We have in circulation 4 million in credit. But the outstanding liabilities, the debt down there, is 4.1 million. How in the world do you pay when you owe 4.4 million? How do you pay it with only 4 million in circulation? Now this is my example of how the reason why we have budget deficits. In that last example, you saw that there was this difference. The economy needed, in order just to maintain itself, it needed the injection of 0.4 million bucks into the economy, just so that you could have a stable currency supply. So who plays that role in this economy when you borrow your money into circulation, you borrow your credit? Well, Uncle Sam is playing that role. And this illustrates it. Here in this situation, we have, the only thing I've added, you go back to that previous example, you still have the central bank loading 4 million bucks into circulation. Automotive, agriculture, medical, and construction, they each owe, since they borrowed a million bucks each from the central bank, they owe, $100,000 more. With the circulation is only 4 million, but we have a debt of 4.4 million. The liabilities exceed the bucks in circulation. So what the government does is it borrows 0.8 million, injects that into circulation. So government borrowing stabilizes the economy. The money that is needed for the interest that the economy accrues each year is injected into the economy by government deficits. This is just a rough example. This is historically what has happened in this country. The green, this is the little chart that Larry Becraft made. The bank money is in green and the government money is in blue. You start off at year one, let's say that that's what's going on. Government money is the great bulk of the currency in circulation in the economy, and bank money is 40%. But there has always been a war going on. You may not see it, but it's been there. A silent war carried out over the decades, over the centuries. And the banking industry, the financial industry, with its paper, has always been at war with gold and silver coin. And so just, as time goes by, this is what's happened in, this is a principle that you can see when you study the economic history of the United States. The financial industry has been very adept at forcing gold and silver or government money out of circulation. That's happened, ladies and gentlemen. And right now, I read a report back in maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. I picked up a report from some library. It was talking about the banks in Iowa during the Great Depression, and the banks that survived and the banks that failed. Now, using fractional reserve banking principles, a bank has got to keep a certain amount of money in reserve to pay people that come in through the door and want to swap their credit for real pieces of paper. Did you know that the banks that survived the Great Depression in Iowa had a reserve requirement of more than 2%, just a little bit above 2%. And the banks that failed in Iowa during the Great Depression, as a practical matter, had a reserve of less than 2%. Wow. That means the bank, back in those days, if they had $2, on deposit, in their vaults, they could issue outstanding credit in the amount of $100. Now today, as a practical matter, they're getting everybody in the world. One of the things that I walk into, I don't use credit cards. And I get real irritated when I walk into a quick stop. Now here, I get my coffee or something to drink in the morning, and the guy in front of me is buying $5 worth of candy or whatever, and guess what he's using? Credit card. Wow. And so the credit industry has really made the American people depend upon it. You know, oh, it's easy. Well, let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that ease is the vehicle by which they acquire economic power over us. Let's look at the math of this situation. How things change over time. Now, this is just Larry Becraft's representation. You know, this parallels real life. You know, the central banks, and let's look at an economy. The central bank loans $10 million into the economy at 10% annual interest and 10% annual principal payments, you know, just to keep it simplistic. Well, at the end of the year, you know, going back to a previous example, at the end of the year one, based upon, you know, the central bank loaning credit into circulation, and then the various industries have to repay interest, you know, at the end of the year one, you know, the economy has to pay when there's, let's see, what am I saying here, $10 million in circulation. It's got to pay $1 million in principal and $1 million in interest, leaving $8 million in circulation, but a total debt of $9 million. At the end of year two, using that previous example, you know, the economy's going to pay $900,000 in interest, and $900,000 in principal, leaving only $6.2 million in circulation, but a total debt of $8.1 million. At the end of year three, the economy has to pay $810,000 in interest, $810,000 in principal, leaving only $4.5 million in circulation, but a total debt of $7.29 million. At the end of year four, the economy is paying $729,000 in interest and $729,000 in principal, leaving $3.12 million in circulation, but a total debt of more than $6.5 million. Year five, the economy pays $656,000 in interest and the same amount in principal, leaving only $1.8 million in circulation, but a total debt of $5.7 million. Can you see what's going on here? You know, if you loan the medium of exchange into circulation, and the users have got to pay principal and interest, you're sucking down from the money in circulation, you know, a bunch every year. And that has an economic effect when you're contracting the currency supply just because you're loaning the credit into circulation. And so what you have here, you know, I kind of summarize it all. To maintain a stable currency supply for these years that we just mentioned, the government must borrow in year one, $2 million, year two, $1.8 million, year three, $1.6 million, year four, $1.4 million, year five, $1.3 million, and you add it all up, you know, just to maintain a stable currency supply, the government's got to borrow $8.1 million. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what we have in the way of a monetary system that is operating here in the United States. You know, a lot of people are talking about we're getting ready to go into hyperinflation. You know, this is just another illustration on my part about what happens during hyperinflation. You know that in order for us to obtain currency for circulation, you got to approach a credit creator, a money creator, and give them a promissory note. They're going to expand your bank account. You're going to give them a mortgage. When you get into hyperinflation, it's just right around the corner. You know, this is just an illustration to show you. You know, if you start off in month one with, you know, maybe that's the approximate amount of mortgaged property in the economy. You know, 60% and 40% is unmortgaged. You know, you can, within 5 months after hyperinflation, you know, the bank's going to be mortgaging property right and left, and you may have within a span of only 5 months, only 5% of the property in the country remains unmortgaged. That's what's going to happen during hyperinflation. Now, here's just an example. You know, there's a lot of people don't understand, you know, what happened during the Roaring 20s, you know, how we got into the Great Depression back in those days. This kind of tells you what the monetary manipulators do. Let's say you have, who are my examples here? I'm using Rocky and Morgan, two fictitious characters that probably have a direct relationship to real life characters. I'm calling them Rocky and Morgan, how did these guys manipulate the stock market? You know, what is a real simple way to manipulate and make money? Well, here was a typical way, say it was 1927, 1928. What are these guys doing? You know, they've got limitless credit. They can go to the banks that they own. Hey, you know, expand my, you know, checking account and let me make money. Sure thing. Of course, they control the bank. But let's say that they're going to pick a target. The ABC widget manufacturers issued some outstanding stock, and these guys are going to make money by manipulating the price of the stock. So they target ABC Widgets, which has 1 million shares outstanding with a value of $1. BUX is my terminology. It means something like a Federal Reserve note. But what the two, Rocky and Morgan, get into an agreement. They're going to pool $1 million. And what they're going to do is they're going to bid up the price of ABC Widget stocks to make profits that they're going to share. So week one, this is what happens. Old Rocky goes out and he buys 100,000 shares. He pays a little bit more. He pays $1.5 for each stock. And look, it costs him $150,000. And this is the complete investment in this venture. Week two, now, you know, Rocky bought. Now Morgan's going to buy the following week. Morgan buys from Rocky, his buddy, the 100,000 shares, but now he's going to pay $2 per share. The cost is $200,000. Week three, oh, Rocky comes back and he buys from Morgan the same shares, $100,000. He pays $5. Cost $500,000. But after selling back and forth between themselves for several months, they have bid up the price of widgets, the widget shares, to $10 a share. Can you see how that was done? You take two guys, pick a stock out, manipulate back and forth. Ooh, wow, well, you know, Wall Street's, wow, look at this rising stock. And so they caused their stock to rise, causing it to rise to $10 a share. And at that time, you know, since they've been selling back and forth the same shares, you know, they have 100,000 shares with a market value. Now that through their activities, they've raised the value of the market shares to $1 million, and then they unload. And when they unload, they get a return of $1 million with an investment of only $150,000. But then you got to also remember, at the time that they sold the shares, they also shorted. Does that make sense? And ladies and gentlemen, that's how, you know, not only the people that we're talking about that have their financial interests are diametrically different from ours, you know, this is one way that they have acquired money. But then again, you know, they've acquired the wealth through the operations of the monetary system. But now let's move on to a different topic. You had Larry Becraft's short view of some economic lessons. Now let's move on to something that's real important. You know, when the United States Constitution was ratified in 1789, you know, before that time, the Congress under the Articles of Confederation didn't have any jurisdiction. You know, it got all of its receipts by asking the states, hey, send us some money so that we can pay our bills. That's the way the Articles of Congress operated. They also didn't have that, Articles Congress didn't have any jurisdiction. And one of the things that had happened during the Revolutionary War, you know, the Articles of Confederation Congress met in Philadelphia, and the soldiers hadn't been paid. So a bunch of grouchy old soldiers that hadn't been paid went to Philadelphia and shook their fists at Congress. And whoa, hey, that was kind of revolutionary for those days. You know, you have soldiers, you know, threatening Congress by shaking their fists. And so that experience, among others, was one of the reasons why in the United States Constitution, the Congress was given a jurisdiction. And here's what they agreed. You know, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution, the federal government was given exclusive jurisdiction over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. What is that? Is that Washington, D.C.? Right. As made by cession of particular states in the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States. Well, that happened. You go to Washington, D.C., and the land in the northern part of D.C. was at one time in the jurisdiction of Maryland. Across the river, that land over there was in the jurisdiction of Virginia. And I'm not going to show you here, but you can go back to these original acts from Maryland and Virginia. They ceded jurisdiction. For that 10 square miles, they ceded it to Washington, D.C. So Congress has exclusive jurisdiction in Washington, D.C. But then it also has exclusive jurisdiction over like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Now that's a provision of the United States Constitution that I think is real important. Now, can I see a show of hands of how many people here have at least some study that relates to, this jurisdiction issue? Okay, well, a lot of people do. Well, I'm going to show you, as I said a few minutes ago, I'm going to show you some things that I think are real important. And I'm just going to show you some stuff in this PowerPoint presentation, pages from the United States statutes at large, and we're going to look at it. And I got 130 pages. 130 pages out of hundreds. I just picked some. And I want some feedback from my audience. I want your opinion as to what these things that Congress has written in certain laws, what it means. Can we do that? Are y'all receptive to that idea?
We're ready.
Okay, you're ready. Okay. You hear that, John? They're ready.
Say your names when you say something, so we get it on camera. We know who to prosecute.
Now this is a page. Now here's what I've done, ladies and gentlemen. Back here in the back of the room, years ago, 10 years ago, I sat down and I strung together the pages out of the United States statutes at large, and then made them, I ran a text conversion. And so for the first time, that you could have the entire United States statutes at large in searchable text is when I produced it. And back there, Steve is making available, the statutes at large, which are the acts of Congress from 1789 forward. They're published, the bills of Congress that get, adopted by Congress and signed by the president, or, a presidential override of a veto. All that stuff gets published in the statutes at large. That is the original law. And that original law is published in a set of books called the United States Statutes at Large. And right now we're up to volume 125. And Steve has the stuff that I've done, all these volumes of the United States Statutes at Large, available back there if you're interested in this issue. If you want to study, it's available back there. And what I've done over the years, ever since I got the United States Statutes at Large organized so that you could engage in word searches, I sit down. I'm just a curious guy. I sit down during the evening, after I come home from work. And I'll sit there with my laptop and, do these searches. And as I do these searches, I find things that I kind of think are real important. I've done searches through the United States Statutes at Large, and I catalog all these little interesting pages out of the Statutes at Large that kind of teach. There's a teaching lesson in the page. What does something mean? And I just kind of collect those in these little folders. You can do citizen. You can do these word searches and go through the United States Statute for citizen. That's a real interesting study. A lot of times when you're sitting down and reading some law, there are phrases that crop up, and you can have a debate. Well, what does this thing mean? There are people that in this freedom movement that'll sit there and you can have arguments for hours, for days. And you can hear a multitude of conflicting opinions. Just based on, everybody's got an opinion about who's a citizen. Haven't y'all encountered that? I mean, a wide variety of opinions. Well, personally, I am tired of personal opinions. To me, I have a lot of whole personal opinions, and maybe you'll agree with some of my personal opinions, but to me the proof of the pudding is, proving your opinion. Showing something. Having a personal opinion about, whether the moon is made out of green cheese can be disproven by sending a rocket up there, a space capsule, to bring back something other than green cheese from the moon. Well, similarly, you can prove what something means, and I'm getting ready to show you some stuff about what jurisdiction means. And my proof consists of, law is not like medicine. The field of investigation, study, in medicine is a real live organism. Human beings, dogs, cats, cows, horses. That's the field of study for medicine. Well, that's real complicated. Astronomy. The field of study for astronomy is you sit there and look at, through a telescope, or you send the Hubble into outer space and take pictures, and we got all these satellites. You're looking at the dynamics of the universe. Well, when you're dealing with law, it isn't a live organism. It isn't outer space and the things you see up there. Your entire universe, when you get down to law, is stuff that's in black and white. And thanks to modern technology with computers, today you can put on a corner. I didn't bring down a hard drive, but let's say you got a terabyte hard drive. You can put all of the United States statutes at large into a small corner of a hard drive. And then you can take, and then another small corner, you got your tax acts and regulations. I've made an effort for serious students of, freedom in this movement. You can now have available the entire United States statutes at large and do some study. And the point that I want to make with you this afternoon is that you yourself can sit down and do some of this study and educate yourself. And I'm just going to take one point, jurisdiction, and I'm going to roll through these examples, and I want to see what conclusions you reach. And be mindful that we got 130 pages. John?
I mentioned where they can be found online.
Yeah, oh, yes. Well, they were first posted, John, stand up. John is an Austin guy. And he's a good friend of mine, and he has a website called constitution.org, which, there are not a whole lot of websites that actually are, you can weigh them. But John's website, you can, it actually, even the electron, there are so many electrons, it has actual weight. John, you've got physical volumes. John tries to collect everything that relates to anything of importance historically and posts them. And years ago, I sent him my United States statutes at large that are searchable and posted them on John's website. So John is just one of those guys that if he runs across an historical work that's real important, boom, he's sticking up a PDF image of it.
You call me a constitutional pack rat.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, now I can't tell you, I would have to go back and look at the file to see where this page is, but this is the page out of the United States statutes at large. Now remember, I started off years ago, I converted JPEGs to PDFs to study, but then for this computer presentation, I had to convert the PDFs back to JPEGs. Am I right, Mr. Farmer from Athens? If you're going to use a PowerPoint presentation, do you not have to use JPEGs?
Well, you can put it in some kind of picture format.
Okay.
That
didn't answer my question.
It will convert from
JPEG,
PDF.
PNG, GIF, whatever.
Okay. Well, what I've done is I went back and I converted these to JPEGs, and so some of these images that you're getting ready to see, I've had to, I'm just a blooming lawyer, and I've had to, I'm not the expert in the world, so some of these images may look a little odd, but here's one image. Look at that phrase. It's the sovereignty and jurisdiction of this state, and it's Tennessee. Oh, look up here. Tennessee and the Big Pigeon. The French Broad. Okay, now I know we're dealing with something close to Knoxville. Okay, and in this law dealing with something close to Knoxville, and I know that because it's talking about the French Broad, which is one part of the Tennessee River, you know, this is one, you get two streams come together, the French Broad, and they form the Tennessee River, right there at Knoxville. But this act says something about that area, that the sovereignty and jurisdiction of this state, obviously talking about Tennessee, in and over the territory aforesaid, and all and every of the inhabitants thereof, shall be and remain the same in all respects until Congress of the United States shall accept the cession to be made by virtue of this act, as if this act had never passed. Now those words, I think this probably had some relationship, if we look back at some pages there, it relates to a fort there in Knoxville. And look at it, you know, here you got a fort, and what's Congress saying? The Tennessee has the sovereignty and jurisdiction over that place until Tennessee comes along and cedes jurisdiction. Now here we got, this is in 1796. I can guarantee you this is out of Volume 2 of the United States Statutes at Large, or Volume 1, excuse me, Statutes at Large. And this is page 452. And look at this is an act authorizing the creation of a lighthouse on Baker's Island in the state of Massachusetts. And I've highlighted down here, you know, this language. As soon as a cession of jurisdiction to the United States over the land proper for the purpose is made by the said state. So what they're talking about here is they're obviously going to build a lighthouse on Baker's Island in Massachusetts, and Congress wants the state to cede jurisdiction over that lighthouse to Uncle Sam. Now this is the operation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 that I showed you a minute ago. Oh, here's another one dealing with, oh, this is on Martha's Vineyard, a lighthouse at Gay Head. Now look at the language that Congress is using here. Can you see it back there? Is that a little too small, or can you read it? You can't?
It's my eyes.
Okay, yeah, I know that feeling. Look at the language. As the jurisdiction of such lands at Gay Head on the western part of Martha's Vineyard in the state of Massachusetts shall have been ceded to the United States. You know, down here in paragraph in section 2, a new inlet on Cape Fear River in the state of North Carolina shall have been ceded to the United States. You know, and looked at the bottom highlighted yellow. Until the lands whereon the same shall have been erected together with the jurisdiction thereof shall have been ceded to the United States. So in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution is talking about how the states will cede jurisdiction over forts, magazines, arsenal, dockyards, and other needful buildings. And now you're seeing how that happens from a federal level. You know, here Congress is coming along for a lighthouse. That's straight out of the United States Constitution. And they're wanting to build a lighthouse here on this one on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. So Congress is saying, hey, we'll make some improvements. We'll stick this lighthouse there. Once the state comes along and cedes jurisdiction of the property to the United States. Here's another one. Oh, Long Island Sound. Talking about how, you know, this is another lighthouse. The legislatures of Rhode Island and New York shall cede jurisdiction of the same over to the United States. So what we don't have here, I'm not including, you know, this is the act where Congress is saying, hey, we'll build a lighthouse here if the state cedes jurisdiction. And, you know, if you go back in the same period of time, you're going to see an act of the legislature of Rhode Island and New York. They'll come along and say, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to cede jurisdiction over the lighthouse property to Uncle Sam. But this is real important. Now, let me ask you this. You know, looking at what jurisdiction, you know, just thinking about this, what jurisdiction did Uncle Sam have prior to the state ceding jurisdiction for this lighthouse on Long Island?
None.
Really? Uncle Sam had, you're telling me none?
10 square miles up there.
Mr. Green, what's your opinion?
I say none.
Okay, so we got a lawyer back there saying that. Here we got, this is in 1829, the state of South Carolina shall convey all the rights, titles, all the right and title of the United States into so land, so it says, And from and after the execution of said conveyance, the jurisdiction of the United States over the soil so conveyed being the same as hereby retroceded to the state of South Carolina. So here you have in this specific situation, you know, South Carolina had transferred to Uncle Sam, you know, jurisdiction over some land. And lo and behold, now, apparently for some reason, Uncle Sam doesn't want the property, or maybe, you know, maybe they were on the wrong spot. You know, they needed to be another spot down the coast, and oops, we made a mistake. We don't want that spot. You know, maybe that was happening. But here they're transferring jurisdiction back to the state. So when that happens, when the jurisdiction is being reconveyed back to the state, after that transfer of jurisdiction, what jurisdiction does Uncle Sam have? Now, here we are in 1834. State of New York shall retain its present jurisdiction of and over Bedloe's and Ellis's Islands, and shall retain exclusive jurisdiction of and over the other islands lying in the waters above mentioned, and now under the jurisdiction of that state. Well, let's see. I'd have to go back and read this. This is something in, who knows, some of those islands in the middle of the Hudson River near New York City. And is Congress acknowledging that the state of New York had exclusive jurisdiction over those islands? Is that what it says? Article 3rd down there, the state of New York shall have and enjoy exclusive jurisdiction of and over all the waters in the Bay of New York. Article 4th, the state of New York shall have exclusive jurisdiction of and over the waters of Kill Van Kull between Staten Island and New Jersey on the westernmost end of Shooter's Island. Article 5th, the state of New Jersey shall have and enjoy exclusive jurisdiction of and over the waters of the Sound between Staten Island and New Jersey lying south of Woodbridge Creek. Down there, number 2, the state of New York shall have exclusive jurisdiction of and over the wharves. Well, now, wherever Congress is saying exclusive jurisdiction, New York, New Jersey, I want to ask you this. What's your opinion? Well, number 3, the state of New York shall have the exclusive right of regulating the fisheries between the shores of Staten Island and the middle of the said waters. Would Uncle Sam have any jurisdiction? Any?
Shouldn't.
Any? Can I see? Who agrees? Who thinks Uncle Sam would have some type of jurisdiction? Oh, John, gee, figures.
On a few subjects.
Okay, all right. Can't see the page number here. But this is an act regarding the northern boundary of the state of Ohio. Oh, when they're admitting Michigan into the Union. And look down here in the bottom part of this image. Provided as always upon the admission, this admission is upon the express condition that said state shall consist of and have jurisdiction over all territory included within the following boundaries. So here you have Congress creating a state, and it's saying that state shall have jurisdiction over all the territory that, you know, this later described that you can't see. Moving on to another act, here you've got in September of 1841 that it shall be the duty of the secretaries of the executive department, and respectively under whose direction any lands for the purposes aforesaid may have been purchased, and over which the United States, what? Do not possess jurisdiction. Oh, so Congress is recognizing that it can own some land in a state, but it does not possess jurisdiction? Oh, but then you can apply to the legislature of the states to which the lands are situated for a what? Cession of jurisdiction? And ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting these ideas. You know, I didn't make this stuff up. I'm just using the words of Congress. Okay, here we are, 1846. Oh, this is interesting. I recognize this one. Here you're talking about, look, Alexandria. Where's Alexandria? It's on the south side of the Potomac. It was one of the cities in the District of Columbia all the way up to 1846. So this has something to do, we all know that Alexandria is no longer in the District of Columbia. You had that 10 square miles, and at some stage in the past, the part in Virginia was retroceded back to Virginia. Congress decided, well, we're going to only have Washington, D.C. in the Maryland part of the session. So this has a direct relationship to this, and I think this is real important. Look at the language of Congress right here. All of that portion of the District of Columbia ceded to the United States by the state of Virginia, and all of the rights and jurisdiction therewith ceded over the same, be and the same are hereby ceded and, what, John? What's that word? What's that phrase? Forever relinquished to the state of Virginia in full and absolute right and jurisdiction, as well of soil as of persons residing or to reside thereon. So Congress gives back its jurisdiction to Virginia over Alexandria. And look, is this it looks like to me it's saying after the cession of Alexandria back to Virginia, Uncle Sam retains how much jurisdiction? Section 3, that the jurisdiction and laws now existing in the said territory ceded to the United States by the state of Virginia, as aforesaid, over the persons and property of individuals therein residing, shall not cease or to determine until the state of Virginia shall hereafter provide by law for the extension of her jurisdiction and judicial system over the said territory hereby receded. So once Virginia comes along and accepts that retrocession, at that stage, how much jurisdiction does Uncle Sam have? Oops. Twice. Oh, here's a proclamation. This has a direct relationship to the retrocession of Alexandria back to Virginia. This is a proclamation of the President. Look at that part in yellow. All that portion of the District of Columbia ceded to the United States by the state of Virginia, and all the rights and jurisdiction therewith ceded over the same shall be ceded and forever relinquished to the state of Virginia in full and absolute right and jurisdiction, as well as of soil, as of persons residing or to reside thereon. Now, apparently by this time, Virginia said, oh, okay, we're going to take it back. So the President is coming along and issuing a proclamation. Oh, that happened. Here in 1854, southwest pass of the Mississippi, so it's along the coast, and the jurisdiction of the United States over said land shall thereafter cease and shall revert to the state of Louisiana. After valid titles and state's jurisdiction have been obtained to the site. So here you have, it looks like it's along Vermilion Bay in Louisiana. You can see that in section 6. So Vermilion Bay had a lighthouse there at one time, and this is Uncle Sam coming back and acknowledging that the jurisdiction over that land is hereby ceasing, and the jurisdiction is reverting back to the state of Louisiana. Oh, this is Massachusetts. You hear Congress is saying it ceded the sovereignty and jurisdiction over the portion of its territory. Notice the District of Boston Corner. Now, if you were in Boston, I think before this time, Boston was a real important point, and Uncle Sam was making ships there and stuff like that, and it had a part of the land, that was called Boston Corner. It's ceding it back. It's ceding the sovereignty and jurisdiction back to Massachusetts. I don't know the year of this. Here, this is talking about the state of Louisiana shall pass a law ceding jurisdiction over the site of such warehouse to the United States. This is obviously having some relationship to. Oh, this is the quarantine station on the Mississippi River below New Orleans. All right. Uncle Sam's appropriating $50,000 to build the quarantine station, and but it's not going to happen until the state of Louisiana cedes jurisdiction over the site to the United States. The next paragraph, something happening in Dubuque, Iowa. The legislature of the state of Iowa will, at its next session, pass an act ceding exclusive jurisdiction over the site to the United States and forever exempting the property from all taxation. So, you can look up there at the first paragraph. They want to complete a customs house, a post office, etc. in Dubuque. They're going to spend $20,000. And so they want the state of Iowa, for this property that's going to be the custom house and post office, they want the state of Iowa to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction? Is that what it says? Well, before that happened, is this an acknowledgement that Iowa had exclusive jurisdiction of the property to begin with? Oh, here we are in 1871. Oh, this is a national asylum for disabled volunteer soldiers. Let's see if we can see the place. Oh, it's someplace in Ohio. But apparently, Uncle Sam had bought the National Asylum for Disabled Volunteer Soldiers. And now it is hereby receding to the state of Ohio jurisdiction that is relinquished by the United States. And the United States shall claim or exercise, Steve?
No jurisdiction.
Over said place after the passage of this act. Okay, this is in 1872. This is talking about something in, United States courts, customs house, depository, post office, internal revenue and pensions offices are going to be built. I can't see. Oh, in Cincinnati. Look at that. The top paragraph. Something's going to go happen in Cincinnati. And they're going to spend some bucks there to build the United States courthouse. But they're wanting the state of Ohio shall cede its jurisdiction over the same to the United States. And shall duly release and relinquish to the United States the right to tax in any way. And in the next one, they're in Albany, New York, state capital of New York. Looks like they're going to be building a customs house, a post office, district courts, and they're wanting they want valid title to the state. Thereafter shall be vested in the United States, and until the state of New York shall cede its jurisdiction over the same. So Congress is getting ready to build courthouses, customs houses, building in Albany, and it's asking the state of it's going to spend so much money there. Oh, it says $350,000. So back in those days, hey, that was a big building. $350,000. Woo, it's a big building. You go to Washington D.C. and the Library of Congress is one of the most ornate buildings you can imagine. Built back at the turn of the century, or the last century, early 1900s. Go into that building, it is a beautiful place, really ornate. And it cost to construct it, just several millions of dollars, back when real money was real. But today, I'm talking about a couple of years ago, it takes $200 million per year to operate the Library of Congress. What a difference. Here in Albany, they're they're wanting the state of New York to cede its jurisdiction to Uncle Sam in order to do the building. And this here's 1872. This has a relationship to something in Michigan, Port Huron in Michigan. They're going to build something there, and Congress wants valid title to the land shall be vested in the United States, and it wants the state of Michigan shall cede its jurisdiction over the same for that property. Here in 1873, down there in Yulla, this is Covington, Kentucky, right across the river from Cincinnati. Looks like they're going to construct a suitable brick building with a fireproof brick wall. And Uncle Sam wants valid title to the land, and shall be vested in the United States, nor until the state of Kentucky shall cede its jurisdiction over the same. Now, is that an acknowledgement? Here Congress is saying, for this building we're going to build in Covington, Kentucky, that it wants Kentucky to transfer jurisdiction of that property to the United States? Is that what's going on? Oh, Annapolis. Okay, here's the Naval Academy. They're going to expand the Naval Academy, a real beautiful place, for the purpose of extending the area and creating additional convenience for quarters, $45,000. But no money shall be paid for said land until the state of Maryland has ceded jurisdiction over the same to the United States. Kansas, this is in 1873. Until a valid title to the site of said building shall be vested in the United States, and until the state of Missouri shall cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. This is relationship. This is in Kansas City. Oh, it's for post office and custom house, body warehouse, internal revenue offices, and other government offices in the city of Kansas in the state of Missouri. And they're talking about Missouri's got us, in order for them to build all that, oh, it's $200,000. But before they're going to spend the $200,000 to build those facilities, Congress wants the state of Missouri to cede exclusive jurisdiction. Well, before that time, if Missouri had exclusive jurisdiction, what was the jurisdiction of the United States before that? I'm just asking questions.
If they're exclusive, then nobody else.
Yeah. Well, Danville, Virginia is real close to where the place where the end of the Civil War ended. Appomattox Courthouse. Southern part of Virginia. And let's see, they're going to build, $70,000 to build district courts of the United States and post office. You know, Uncle Sam's going to build for $70,000, some buildings there. And it wants the state of Virginia shall cede to the general government jurisdiction over the property. Oh, Montgomery, Alabama, my state. Let's see. Oh, okay, this is the same thing going on. They want courts of the United States, post office, land office. You know, they're going to spend, $125,000 to build offices there in Montgomery. And Uncle Sam wants the state of Alabama shall cede it to the United States, exclusive jurisdiction over the same during the time the United States shall be and remain the owner thereof. Also, this is in 1872, that Congress wants the state of Minnesota to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. Looking at the second act on that page, that chapter 76, has a relationship to a public building in Columbus, Ohio. And Congress wants the state of Ohio to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. Also in 1882, this something it's more customs houses in Quincy, Illinois. Congress wants the state of Illinois to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over that property. The second act that we have highlighted here, also this is in Peoria, Illinois. And it looks like they're going to be building the United States Courts and Customs House and Body Warehouse there for $225,000. And Congress wants the state of Illinois to cede her jurisdiction over the same to Uncle Sam. Also in 1882, this is relating to, I can't see the city, but it's obviously in Tennessee. Uncle Sam is wanting the state of Tennessee to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over some land. Here, I can't, this is, 1882. The top one, the state of Missouri shall cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction. The second, that chapter 182, it looks like, they're going to erect a public building in Louisville, Kentucky. Congress wants the state of Kentucky to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. The third one on that page, something in Rochester, New York. They're, $300,000. They're going to build something there, customs houses, courthouses, and all. And Uncle Sam wants the state of New York to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction to that property. Also 1882, we got a whole bunch of stuff here from 1882. This is in Galveston, Texas. How far is Galveston from here? 200 miles? Well, they're gonna, let's see, this deals with the customs house. Fireproof vaults for the accommodation of the customs house, internal revenue offices, and 8 other government offices in Galveston. Congress wants the state of Texas to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over that property. Chapter 185, they're going to build in Syracuse, New York, obviously some government offices. They want the state of New York to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. Here we have the state of Iowa Congress wants the state of Iowa to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the property that's talking about in the first part of this image. Chapter 187 in Detroit, Michigan. Let's see, they're going to customs houses, post office. They want the state of Michigan, in order for them to build this building, I can't see the price there that they're going to spend there. But no money shall be appropriated for this purpose, shall be available until a valid title shall be vested in the United States, nor until the state of Michigan shall cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the land so purchased. Here we have, also in 1882, this is something going on in Greensboro, North Carolina. Congress wants the state of North Carolina to cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. Now, I know this is a bit repetitive, but to me, that old example I was talking about, repetitive examples, show them a lot of very specific items, and you get the point. You're seeing the truth that enables you to see how things work. Now let's go down, let me quickly move. We can go through a lot of these examples, and maybe we'll do some more of these this afternoon. But I want to get down here, there's something.
You got time. I was a question.
Oh, you had a question? I thought you were telling me time. Oh, okay.
Well, some of these say jurisdiction, and others say exclusive jurisdiction. I noticed. That's different?
Well, I don't think so. I think jurisdiction and exclusive jurisdiction, but let's just limit our analysis here to exclusive jurisdiction. Like here we are, I flip back up to something involving the state of South Carolina shall cede to the United States exclusive jurisdiction over the same. That just meant, even if they just said jurisdiction, it looks like to me that prior to a state ceding jurisdiction or exclusive jurisdiction, what conclusions do you draw about, before the state did that, what jurisdiction did Uncle Sam have? This according to the words of Congress, and just using English, John, rules of construction.
Yeah, in Article 1, Section 8, Congress has delegated a number of powers. Those powers may, in general, be exercised on state territory, but only those powers. So these are limited subject matter, or subjectum powers. In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, it refers to exclusive jurisdiction, and what he means there is the general powers of a state, as opposed to
Constitutional powers that are delegated to Congress.
restricted, limited subject matter powers,
Right.
which happen to be also on a state territory, but which doesn't thereby confer exclusive jurisdiction. In fact, most of those powers are concurrent.
Well, we're dealing here with, John, where I'm ultimately going is, I want to deal with the issue of, now that you've seen a bunch of examples through the statutes at large, pages out of the statutes at large, where the word jurisdiction or exclusive jurisdiction is used, now I want to drift on to, the whole purpose of this exercise is to make a determination, now that you have feasted, so to speak, your brain upon pages out of the United States statutes at large, let's get down to, and I'm sorry folks, but I've kind of got ahead of myself here. There's a point we're going to get into. I want to determine what the phrase subject to the jurisdiction of the United States means. Oh, here's something that's very interesting. Why do you have laws of why is Congress using this phrase legislative jurisdiction? What does that mean?
Something happened where they went from law to public law. Didn't
No.
Well, here you have an act, you know, look at that phrase, legislative jurisdiction. Isn't that real interesting? Oh, look, another, 1961, to authorize the Secretary of the Army to adjust the legislative jurisdiction? What does that mean? To authorize the Secretary of the Air Force to adjust the legislative jurisdiction exercised by the United States over lands within Eglin Air Force. Oh, that's down in Florida. Eglin. Steve, did you ever fly in and out of Eglin?
No.
You didn't? Oh, okay. But isn't that odd? They're using a phrase. To relinquish to the state of New Jersey jurisdiction over the lands of Fort Hancock. To provide for a retrocession of legislative jurisdiction over a United States Naval Supply Depot, which is Clearfield in Ogden, Utah. Here we are in 1960. What in the world, what's the meaning of this phrase, legislative jurisdiction? And it's in direct relationship to tracts of land. To authorize executive agencies to create or to grant easements in, over, and upon real property of the United States under the control of such agencies and for other purposes. And in this particular act that's passed by Congress in 1962, they used the word legislative jurisdiction. There is hereby retroceded to the state of Montana, effective when accepted by said state in accordance with its laws. Such jurisdiction as has been ceded by such state to the United States over any lands within the boundaries of Big Hole National Battlefield. In 1963, upon the delivery and acceptance and conveyance herein is authorized that any jurisdiction heretofore ceded to the United States by the state of Mississippi over the lands and roads transferred shall thereby cease and thereafter rest in the state of Mississippi. Now this may be getting boring, but we're going to get up to a real specific point. Here you're talking about a retrocession of jurisdiction to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Relinquish to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts all or such portion as he may deem desirable for the relinquishment of the jurisdiction heretofore acquired by the United States over any lands within the Fort Devens military reservation. The second law down there, to authorize the Secretary of the Navy to adjust the legislative jurisdiction exercised by the United States over lands comprising the United States Naval Hospital, Portsmouth, Virginia. Man, that's a big Portsmouth, man. They got a whole lot. They built a bunch of ships there. Uncle Sam parks a whole bunch of his ships there. And they're using legislative jurisdiction. Here we have another act of Congress talking about legislative jurisdiction. Exclusive jurisdiction. You know, legislative jurisdiction, look at the title, to adjust the legislative jurisdiction. Legislate an act to authorize the adjustment of the legislative jurisdiction. To retrocede to the state of Colorado, exclusive jurisdiction held by the United States over the real property comprising the Fort Lyons Veteran Hospital. To authorize the Attorney General to adjust the legislative jurisdiction exercised by the United States over lands within the Federal Reformatory at Chillicothe, Ohio. Wasn't Chillicothe one of the first capitals of Ohio? To authorize the Secretary of the Navy to adjust the legislative jurisdiction exercised by the United States over lands comprising the United States Naval Station at Long Beach. To adjust the, look, right up here, legislative jurisdiction. Have you ever seen these words?
No.
Oh, to authorize the Secretary of the Interior to convey to the state of Tennessee certain lands within the Great Smoky Mountains. And down here they're talking about, look at that the state of Virginia of legislative jurisdiction over the lands. What is legislative jurisdiction? To authorize the Secretary of the Army to adjust the legislative jurisdiction. Adjust to the legislative jurisdiction? What does that mean? Relinquishment? What does that mean?
Give it up.
What does it mean, Clay? What? Huh? What does it mean? Relinquish legislative jurisdiction? Oh, United States Code relating to the relinquishment of legislative jurisdiction? A conveyance to the jurisdiction of the United States? Such portion of the legislative jurisdiction over the lands? Partial relinquishment of legislative jurisdiction? Exclusive jurisdiction, legislative jurisdiction. Legislative jurisdiction over such lands is hereby ceded to the state of Oklahoma. Legislative jurisdiction again. Is this, have you ever seen these words?
Mhm.
Legislative jurisdiction. Legislative jurisdiction. Legislative jurisdiction. Legislative jurisdiction. Legislative jurisdiction. Legislative jurisdiction. Hey, this is 1999. Legislative jurisdiction. Don't know the date on that. Exclusive jurisdiction of the state. This is in 2002. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services on behalf of the United States may, whenever the Secretary deems it desirable, relinquish to the state of Arkansas all or part of the jurisdiction of the United States over the lands and properties encompassing the Jefferson Labs campus. Retrocession of jurisdiction. This is here recently. The administrator may relinquish to a state all or part of the legislative jurisdiction of the United States. Legislative jurisdiction. Okay, we had a little tour de force. We had a tour of pages out of the United States statutes at large, dealing with jurisdiction. You know, we've seen partial, exclusive, just plain old jurisdiction. We've seen legislative jurisdiction. But would you agree that Congress itself acknowledges that states have jurisdiction, and Congress seems to recognize that, state jurisdiction must be acquired from the state, and prior to the acquisition of jurisdiction in a state, it has no jurisdiction? Does that seem apparent from what Congress has to say? Now, we want to deal with this phrase. I want to learn from each of you. I am a dumb lawyer from North Alabama, and I'm going to show you some stuff, and I want you to tell me what it means. And we're going to deal with this phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, you're going to see a whole bunch of examples after this. Whoever shall bring into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. How many of you diagrammed in the 3rd grade or 4th grade or whatever it was? I got beat over the head a lot by my teacher. Bam, 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 wake up, Becraft. About diagramming sentences. It was a repetitive beats on the head that forced me to learn diagramming. And so I diagrammed this phrase right up here. Now, wouldn't you agree that the subject of the sentence in that phrase is whoever? And the verb is shall bring. And there's a prepositional phrase into the, and the object of the prepositional phrase has an or in it. And so there are two objects of this prepositional phrase, into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's the way I diagram it. I could be wrong, I wouldn't. So here is, in 1804, the very first time in the United States statutes at large, you will see this phrase is, you see subject to the jurisdiction of the United States there. Mr. Farmer from Athens, what's the word right before subject to? Countries? The first time you see this phrase, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, in the United States statutes at large, Congress is saying countries? subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? Is that odd? Another act, 1843, any river, harbor, bay, or waters subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's another use of subject to the United States by Congress. Oh, don't really, this is probably sometime in the 1870s, I think. Well, here we got that phrase that we just diagrammed. Within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Section 6, if two or more persons in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Section 7, whoever recruits soldiers or sailors within the United States or in any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The next, to engage in armed hostilities against the same or opens within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, or subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 8, every person enlisted or engaged within the United States or in any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Oh, depart the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Bring into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 151. Whoever with intent to defraud shall pass, utter, publish, or sell, or attempt to pass, utter, publish, or sell, or shall bring into the United States, or any place subject to the jurisdiction of the... is the United States, looking at section 151, is the United States a place different from a place subject to the jurisdiction thereof?
Yes.
Is it? Within the United States. Now imagine the United States as being the 50 states. That's what the United States means there. Then where is this different place, any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Where is that?
Territories.
Section 158, whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 159, whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 160, whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 161, whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Bring into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 170, whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. 171, whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That may be the same page, but 245, brought into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Oh, and look also, any state, from one state, territory, or the district of the United States, or a place non-contiguous subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, contiguous means joining each other, right? Non-contiguous, they don't touch each other, right? You know, the state of California is non-contiguous to Texas. It is also non-contiguous to Canada. But then again, Puerto Rico is non-contiguous to Florida, and Puerto Rico would be non-contiguous to the United States, thinking in the sense of the 50 states, right? Whoever shall knowingly and willfully bring into the United States, or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The provisions of this title shall extend to all territories, possession. Oh, we don't have an or there, do we? The provisions of this title shall extend to all territories, possessions, and places subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. From one state, territory, or the district of the United States, a place non-contiguous but subject to the jurisdiction of the United States is different from a state or territory. Is that right, Steve? Within or subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. You know, here they're talking about for the purpose of using any facility of an exchange. This has something to do with, well, instrumentalities, it might be stocks and copper. Security transactions. So it looks like it deal with, registration down here, so this deals with stocks. Securities, National Securities Exchange. So this deals with, you know, stocks and bonds, but it's, you know, it has effect, you know, this law, making something unlawful, deals with something happening within the United States or at a place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Oh, this is FCC, I think. This is related to radio broadcasts, intended or used for commercial communications between the United States or any territory or possession, continental or insular, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, right there, it seems like to me, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States has a direct connection to a territorial possession. Am I right? Oh, here's something, interstate transportation of prison-made products. You know, they're telling you where this law is going to apply, and it's going to apply to a transaction from one state, territory, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, or the District of the United States, or a place non-contiguous but subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Same thing, listen. Bring into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This deals with counterfeiting. This is 1936. Here's 1938. All territories, possessions, and places subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, whether contiguous thereto or not, by any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof, from the United States or any territory subject to the jurisdiction thereof, or celebrating into the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction. Well, hey, now, after you have seen a whole bunch of examples, what conclusion do you draw about, let's say the United States is defined as the 50 states?
That wasn't defined.
Huh?
That wasn't defined in all these. It just refers to the United
Well,
States.
Let's presume that. Let's presume in our example.
If that's the case, why would they have to add to jurisdiction thereof? And
Well,
you showed us all examples of where they established jurisdiction under law. Those states had to cede that to the United States.
That's true.
To allow them to have
Oh,
jurisdiction.
but what I'm presenting here is, what is the meaning of subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? Now, let's presume that for this has something to do with stepchildren and children through adoption. You know, the gold star label, so this happens to be something during World War II. But let's presume, for purposes of this law, that the United States is the 50 states. Where is a place subject to the jurisdiction thereof?
Maybe foreign embassies.
That's okay.
Well, our embassies in a foreign country, or more precisely.
Okay, here is something dealing with narcotic drugs. This is 1955. Drugs and marijuana. Oh, this is getting some witnesses. The attendance of witnesses and the production of records may be required from any place in any state or in any territory or other place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, in definitions, let's say you've probably seen in statutes, let's give for comparison purposes, let's say that a law of Congress relates to animals. And it defines animals. Animals means in this act a dog, cat, horse, and a cow. Now, is a dog the same, even though they're encompassed within animals, is a dog the same thing as a cat? Is a cat the same thing as a horse? Is a horse the same thing as a cow? They're all different. They're not the same. Now, with that in mind, look at this. From any place in any state. Well, if state was a place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, why would you even put in the phrase state? Is state different from a place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? What's your view?
Yes, the state has jurisdiction over its lands unless it cedes it to the United States.
But my question is a state different from a place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? Look at that.
It may be.
Okay. Whoever brings in the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction. Looks like to me that using rules of English grammar and looking at sentences like this, that disjunctive there, or, separates the United States from any place subject to the jurisdiction. Whoever within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, you can go through, I have a wide collection. I've gone through every state. Get on a search engine, look through a state code, pull up phrases. So here are just 3 phrases that I pulled up in Alabama, which happens to be, you find the phrase subject to the jurisdiction of the United States quite often in these definitions of state. But here's just 3 examples in Alabama state law where the phrase subject to the jurisdiction of the United States comes up. And in all 3 examples, it happens to appear in the definition of state. And so looking at the first definition of state, state means a state of the United States, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the United States Virgin Islands, or any territory or insular possession subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, to me, the objects of this little sentence here is a state. Another object is the District of Columbia. Another object is Puerto Rico. Another object is United States Virgin Islands. And another object is territory or insular possessions. And subject to the jurisdiction of the United States modifies and defines what? Territory, insular possession? Do y'all agree?
Barry, go back three slides.
Right there?
Yeah. The attendance of witnesses and the production of records may be required from any place in any state or in any territory. Doesn't that mean something different from what those other ones are saying?
Well, no, this is, you have to, we're not dealing with, we're dealing with trying to understand what a phrase means. Phrases appear in a wide variety of laws. This one happens to be, obviously, you see down here, witness fees. This has something to do with, issuing subpoenas to witnesses, and paying them fees. And, while we don't have it, this is in reference to narcotics, drugs, and marijuana cases, apparently, and subpoenaing witnesses for those. But, the attendance of witnesses and the production of records may be required from any place in any state or in the territory or place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States at any place designated, a designated place of hearing. So it just deals with, subpoenaing witnesses, but we're trying to determine the meaning of subject to the jurisdiction of the United States where this phrase appears that, as it's outlined in yellow. We're just limiting our inquiry. We could get into this full scope of all these laws where the phrase appears, but we're trying to determine the meaning of the phrase from the various laws where it does appear. Follow me? But the point I want to make is, it's after lunch.
We're over time.
Yeah. The point I want to make is, looks like to me, a state is a place different from a place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. With that, now we're going to go to lunch.
Well,
Am I correct, Richard?
Richard.
Right now?